I'm on a mission to prove just how cheap you can bring a classic muscle car back to life. I swapped in the engine from a GMC Yukon, got it wired up, got the cooling system built, and we only have a few things left before we fire this bad boy up for the very first time. All right, so I think the next thing I want to work on here is the fuel system. I think currently we have one 3/8 fuel line and then one like 1/4 inch fuel line. You can see them right there. There's a little one and a big one. So I'm gonna replace the little one right there, which I think originally was some sort of fuel tank vent, or I'm not sure, but what I'm gonna need for my fuel injection is a fuel return line. I just grabbed a brand new 3/8 fuel line. I'm gonna replace the little one, and I'm gonna run the fuel send probably through the 3/8 so that, you know, it's a nice fresh fuel line. Then we'll use the original feed line for a return line. So the first thing I gotta do is take out the gas tank, and obviously before I do that, I gotta remove this wheel. Okay, there we go. There's the gas tank, and it looks like we just got one sort of like cross member thing going here, and it should slide right out actually. And the pickup is on the bottom, which is awesome. That should make it pretty easy to drain this thing because it's full of gas, and I'm definitely gonna be putting it into my car. Cool, let's get this guy drained first. Right, we got this thing off, and there's some crazy little thing on the side of this here. Maybe some sort of emissions control. Doesn't say what it is. But this will be all kind of simplified in a way. We will have an electronic thing here, but none of these houses, I don't think. Cool. All right, now that that's out, let's get to changing out that fuel line. All right, you know, actually, before I do the fuel line, fuel tank back in here, there's one other thing I gotta do, and I've been kind of putting it off because it's not easy to do, and that is to install the drive shaft. And normally on an old, rear-wheel drive car, you kind of just slap it right in, but on the Corvette, it's a little bit more challenging. So there is this cross member here, and this is of course a fixed, the differential's fixed. It doesn't move at all. And there really isn't, from what I understand and from what I've been told, there isn't really an easy way to do this. I'm gonna have to probably drop the differential down just a little bit or pivot it or something like that for me to get the drive shaft first up above the differential. Then we're gonna go into the transmission and then hopefully go back into the differential. All right, I got this thing unbolted from all different places, but I think the key is to unbolt this one. I'm not sure that this even matters too much. This probably helps so you're not fighting the leaf spring, but the leaf spring isn't, it's movable. So I'm not sure you need to even take this off, but definitely these two bolts right there, which is this sort of like subframe on a rubber bushing type deal. And I took this off for good measure. That's probably a good idea to take that off as well. And I don't want to put my hand up there, but I feel like there's a little bit of room now. Let me see, let me get the light on. There we go. There might be enough room up there. Took quite a bit of elbow grease to get that wedged in there, but we always have bigger sockets to put in if that's not enough room. Let's give it a try. All right, it's almost enough room, but it's just not quite enough. Seems like I'm gonna need to go up about a ½ inch more to get this U-joint up over the differential so that I can push this thing back far enough to get this thing in there. Okay, I'll get a bigger pry bar, get a bigger socket, and we'll do this. All right, I got this thing up over the differential and I almost got this thing in there, but now the problem is that the yoke, whatever, this thing here, yeah, it's hitting the floorboard and there is room above that, luckily. I don't know if this is bigger than your typical Corvette one or what. This is the 4L60 yoke, whatever this thing is, the transmission input. So I think I'm gonna need to lower down this transmission just a little bit. Yeah, all right. All right, we got this guy in there. Unfortunately, probably due to my little bit bigger yoke here, it is hitting just barely on the side of the transmission tunnel, and this wouldn't be a big deal if this was a normal car. I would just take a hammer and give it a little love tap, but of course this is fiberglass, so I'm gonna have to adjust this guy a little bit, which isn't a big deal. I did build in some adjustability on this thing right here, so I think if I just loosen these bolts, kind of push it over, and then I'll tighten these back down. All right, so back to the fuel situation. I got the gas tank out and I got a big box in the mail, which is a fuel injection gas tank, pump, pretty much the whole kit. Yeah, it's pretty exciting. I like getting big boxes in the mail. All right, so we got ourselves a brand new gas tank, which has the mounting points and all that stuff for like an internal fuel injection pump. You know, originally I was gonna go with an external pump and try and use my old gas tank, just like I did with the 68 Mustang build. But I'm actually unsure if I'm gonna put this episode out before or after the Mustang fuel pump problem episode, but the external fuel pump actually died in the Mustang, unfortunately. It lasted for a while, but I think it's kind of known that internal fuel pumps are really the way to go. So I went ahead and grabbed this guy here, which is a Tanks Inc. gas tank. In fact, the full kit is from Tanks Inc. So we have, I'm sure this is like a fuel pump. Got some gas tank straps. This is actually the exact same setup I went with the Challenger over there. I've actually put a lot of miles on my Challenger. I've had it in there for like years now, actually a few years now, and it's been awesome. They come with Walbro pumps, the good stuff. This thing's good for something like 600 horsepower or something. And the tanks are super, super solid. Actually, from what I can tell, better than factory. Here, let's pull this guy out of here. All right, there we go. Brand new tank. We've got the provisions for fuel injection right here. Got a fuel sender. We got the fill up, and we got a nice fuel sump in there. I don't know if you can see. There you go. You got your fuel sump in there, and I can vouch for this thing working very well because I've ran my Challenger completely out of gas multiple times, and it never starves for fuel when you're going around corners or anything like that. So this is pretty good stuff, and that's what I want in my Corvette. So let's get this guy put together. I just got to throw the fuel pump in here, probably do a little bit of adjusting, fuel sender, and we should be good. All right, so we got our fuel sender here, which is going to give us our gas gauge. And we got our fuel pump here, which is a Walbro 255, I think. And this guy here, which needs to be trimmed. All right, so the first step here is to measure the depth of the tank, and we're looking like right about 9 1/8 of an inch for this guy. So it looks like the idea here is to, let's see here, is to basically trim these 2 tubes to fit. We'll get this guy hooked up to whichever one it needs to be so that this thing, you know, rests almost at the bottom of the tank. Not quite, not quite at the bottom, but almost at the bottom. And then we'll throw this guy in there, and I don't think it's much more complicated than that. All right, we got this guy kind of set up here. The first time I forgot to put the little jacket on him, the little foam, and so I had to pull this guy off, put it back on there, but we're looking good. Got the return line sort of zip tied next to it, I think for cooling reasons, and just got to put the wires through this thing, and then I think we're ready to toss it on in there. All right, and that's pretty much it. Just bolt these guys in there, you're all set. I also put my gas cap sort of little thing here for my other tank. Cool, so that's all done. I want to go ahead and swap out my old fuel line now, and then we can get this guy installed. All right, so first step, while I have this thing out of the car, before I put this thing in there, is to install a couple of these little, there we go, little hardline adapters. So this is gonna convert this fuel hardline into an AN adapter, kind of like a little compression fitting. All right, I got this old brake line out of here because I cut it, and that was the only way I could figure how to get this thing out. So I don't know how I'm gonna get this new one in here. Up front, it's all right along the frame rail, pretty easy, not really any issue up there, but back here, it kind of goes up under the frame rail and then it comes out right here, and I just don't know how to get it up and through. I think probably step one is to take this wheel off. I don't know which way to feed it from. I suppose probably this way. All right, here is where that fuel line has to go down. I don't know. I suppose my only shot at this would be to feed it from underneath, up and around, because I really would like to put this in the factory spot. All right, let's try it, I guess. So we'll see. All right, well, I've got it shoved through like up here and kind of got it worked out here, but man, this is by far the hardest fuel hose or fuel line I've ever had to install. I think at this point though, I can probably work it very slowly by like pushing down with the screwdriver and push it forward and hopefully get it to come out here. I'm gonna lose all of the shape of this thing though, so yeah, there's no hope for this pre-bent, at least from right about there forward. I think I'm gonna lose all of this shape, but that's okay, no big deal. All right, well, the good news is that I got this thing all the way up around there, but the bad news is I kinked the hose, it kind of, while I was pushing, I didn't notice that one of these guys got kinked, and when I tried to unbend it, it broke. So that's a bummer after all that work, but I'm sure I can just put a little rubber line between these guys with some of those compression fittings, and it'll be just fine. This one should be a breeze to put in here, the rest of this. And then we'll connect these two with a Teflon AN hose. All right, it's the next day, and when I was ordering new fittings, I kind of had an epiphany. I realized that I don't have to put a rubber or even like a PTFE, any sort of hose in here at all. I can just use one of these little union guys here. That's exactly what I did, and I like it. Not as good as having a non-cut line, of course, but I think this is probably the next best thing. All right, to finish off the heater hoses, I ordered just a couple of factory Corvette, C3 Corvette, heater hoses. Actually, these guys have the 90-degree I need, because from the heater core they point straight down. So I'll go ahead and throw these guys in there, and I'll probably end up cutting them pretty short just to meet up with that H-pipe. All right, we got the water pipes, or the I should say the heater hoses all set up, and I even got a couple of clamps on here. Got some clamps right here, I think on the factory heater hose location, not sure. So the next thing I want to do, since I have these fuel lines here ready to go, I'm going to go ahead and mount the fuel filter, I think right there. We'll throw a couple of these guys on there to mount off this fender well, something like that. And then we'll be ready to whip up some PTFE lines that go all the way around and into the fuel rail over there. Fuel filter is installed. Okay, I guess installed good enough. I think what I want to do is go ahead and get the AN lines, the PTFE AN lines done for this guy. And this is the first time I'm actually going to try and do them myself. I've done the standard AN lines, but I haven't done the PTFE, and I know they're a little bit harder, so wish me luck. But I did want to start using the more resilient PTFE stuff from now on. So we're really only looking to go from there, you know, all the way around and into one of these two fuel fittings. I don't know which one yet, but we'll just get two cut. We'll figure out which one goes where, and we'll go from there. All right, that actually really wasn't too bad at all. In fact, dare I say, PTF lines are even easier to make than your standard like rubber AN lines. Definitely not something to be afraid of, like I was for many years. Cool, I think that's it for the fuel system. All right, I got myself a couple of AN lines here whipped up, some PTFE, and I used exactly the amount of hose that I got. I think it was like 25 feet, so whew, cut that one a little close. And I am going to also connect my wires here. And from this day forward, I'm turning over a new leaf in my wiring. I'm going from soldering to crimping, which is supposedly, you know, the better way to go. I don't know, there definitely is a debate on this, but I got myself just about the best crimper you can get, because I take wiring pretty seriously. If you know anything about my channel, you know that I definitely do. So I got that bad boy, and I got some very good non-insulated splice connectors of all different sizes. So the idea is that I will join two, it's kind of hard to do, here we go. I'll join two wires like this, kind of like how I did with solder. I used to join two wires like this and then solder the middle and heat shrink. Instead, I'm going to join two like that and then crimp one of these guys in the middle and then still put heat shrink on. I've always been a soldering man myself because it kind of seems like you get more wire-to-wire connection that way, and you know, with crimping you kind of just smushing two wires together, but supposedly these are better for vibration and don't crack like soldered connections. I can wrap my head around the physics of that. The solder definitely does wick up into the wire and make this like sometimes pretty big chunk of like just stiff, non-bendable piece of wire, and that has always worried me. I will say right now that I've never ever had a solder fail that I know of, and I feel like I would know because, you know, every wire has a purpose. And I've done a number of cars and wiring harnesses in my day, so I'm just gonna say that I don't think soldering's bad, but if this is better, then I'm gonna go with this, because I'm always trying to make my builds better and more bulletproof. It's kind of like a never-ending thing. So if you know more about this than me, or if you have any opinions, let me know. I'm curious. All right, let's try our very first crimp right now. Well, I've crimped before, but we'll try our very first wire connection crimp of this style. All right, got the wires all loomed up and protected with Tesla tape. Looking good. Now, before I start hooking up all of these fuel lines and all that stuff, it's definitely something I definitely do want to blow out all of the dust and all the metal shavings that they're definitely parked in those fuel lines up there. All right, I can smell gasoline. So I bet there was a good puff of gasoline that came out. Ooh, a little sketchy. All right, here's the final product here. Got the tank all strapped in. Got my fuel lines hooked up. Let me see if I can, there you go, if you can see. Fuel lines are connected over here. Got my tank vent up here. Looking pretty good.